Now I'm going to talk about Anderson's Code of the Street. Now, Anderson is not a Chicago school theorist. He's actually a subculture theorist because his theory describes a particular subculture that emerges in Sampson and Wilson's structurally disorganized, culturally isolated, and culturally disorganized communities. Anderson describes how in these communities, this subculture has the same values as mainstream culture, but because they live under different social conditions, they express those values in different ways. The cultural values that most of us probably uphold are individualism, so we value doing things on our own, consumption, meaning we value owning nice things, and self-reliance, meaning we don't rely on others to help us in any way. In mainstream culture, we demonstrate these values by having a good job, having good relationships with our family, being educated, and through those we are able to purchase things that we like and we want. But Anderson explains that in these structurally and socially disorganized, culturally isolated, and culturally disorganized communities, they don't have that. They don't have good relationships with their family. They don't have access to a good education. They don't have access to jobs. And so violence becomes a way of affirming themselves and their status. So Anderson agrees with Sampson and Wilson in many ways. He describes how, again, there are these macro level factors, these decisions that can explain the crime and violence in these inner cities. He says that these ethnic and racial groups in these cities experience endemic racism. They are alienated from mainstream society. They lack the availability of jobs that pay a living wage. Their communities have been collapsing because of rampant drug use and drug trafficking. And they have access to guns because they live in communities that have been harmed greatly by these macro level factors. These individuals have no hope for ever leaving those cities. They feel anger towards the system and bitterness towards the system. As a consequence, they create a street code. And this is Anderson's Code of the Street. The street code is a set of informal rules governing interpersonal behavior. They're like norms of behavior. At the heart of the street code is respect. You, a member of this community who adheres to the street code, values receiving respect. And respect is gained through three mechanisms. Demeanor, meaning how you present yourself. So in other words, if someone mocks you or disses you, you're not going to walk away. You're going to be tough and you're going to stand up for yourself. You're going to fight it out. Your appearance, having nice cars, brand new sneakers, jewelry, that is also going to garner your respect. And then your mannerisms, looking people in the eye, standing tall. You'd rather die than walk away. Part of this street code, right, this respect, again, is that self-reliance that the mainstream culture upholds. That you take care of yourself. So if someone does something wrong to you, you fight back and do something wrong to them. Because these individuals feel anger and bitterness towards the system, because they have no hope, they feel alienated by the police and the criminal justice system. And so they're going to fight for themselves. They're going to fight to survive. But Anderson describes how in these cities, not all adhere to the street code. In fact, there are two kinds of families. Decent families and street families. Your decent families attempt to keep kids away from the street. They try to instill hard work, self-reliance, and sacrifice for their children. What's interesting about the decent families, maybe some of you come from them, they won't let you go outside. They make you come home every day at a particular time, right? They don't want you to feel the lure of the street, because that street code, the lure of that street is strong. Now, street families are fully invested in the code. They have a superficial sense of family and community. They aggressively socialize their kids to be aggressive. So if they get into a fight at school, they make the kid go back to school and fight the kid. Parents yell at their kids. These parents hit their kids. So the street families are much more invested in the code. Sometimes you have a mixture of both, where you have a decent family that is consciously making decisions to appear tough, but then when they're around teachers or adults, they are polite and deferential. So Anderson describes then that crime and violence results from the street code, and that street code forms as a result of these macro level conditions. And so he explains that to end this problem, you have to end racism, you have to fight inequality, you have to provide opportunities, you have to reestablish a viable mainstream economy, and you have to encourage a positive sense of the future. These kids feel no hope. They feel anger and bitterness, and alienated from both mainstream society and the judicial system. So Anderson, just like Sampson and Wilson, would target their policy efforts at that macro level, making these theories macro level theories. Sean McKay, Sampson and Groves, Sampson, Raudenbush, and Earls, they, however, would target their policies at the meso level. Sean McKay, Sampson, and Groves would target social ties, social networks, informal social control. Because for them, that mediates the relationship between community characteristics and crime. Sampson and Wilson disagree. For them, those macro level factors have a significant effect on those neighborhood characteristics. And so you're not going to change those neighborhood characteristics unless you change those macro level factors. And the same thing for Anderson. And so, as you probably know, that is not how we have sought to address the problems in these cities. So instead, most funding for policies to address the crime and violence in American cities has gone to policing.